there. Yeah. It's kind of a rotation. Takes up that slack. You come down. Then we start to ask for the give. Now once you put the contact on the bit, when that give takes place, you release it, take the slack up. And what you're teaching your horse here by taking the slack up is a preparation for the give. Your horse can feel the vibration of the rein going through your hand, and through the consistency of this, they start to get this understanding of what's being asked. Okay? But you're always starting from the middle, so you take, and once you do that, if you're in the middle of the rein, you don't abandon that spot, you keep it, so you come up, and now you have a loop, you come up, but you're still in the middle. It's kind of rest between your thumb and your palm. And you pick it up, there's a give. Okay, now, if this horse starts to resist the give, I will, instead of adding more pressure, I will slowly add both legs. Okay? And that puts energy into the decision. If you add more pressure, you're usually going to create more resistance. So this is all this looks like. Take the slack up. So this is what you're getting comfortable with, picking up that rein so that you're able to take that slack. And this is where your platform exists. It's always here in front of the saddle. You should never find your hands back here, out in these areas, over your hips, always functioning up here. And so, for example, if we're going to turn a horse to the left and he starts to turn to the left, if I don't immediately take that slack up, if I don't, I'm going to be back here. By trying to, be in position to carry on. So as he starts to come to the left, I want to take that slack up, pick up the rein. When he starts to come to the right, take that slack, and so forth. So your hands are always staying in this general workspace. And this is kind of an important thing for you. Now, whether or not we can get much communication to begin with on him, we'll see. But we talked a little bit about the puppet rein. If I'm going to pick up this rein, I want to lift this. Just put upper tension. There comes the right front foot. Now what I'm going to do here with my fingers is time the footfall by picking up that rein. That becomes kind of the puppet rein. So I lift this up. There's a footfall. There's a footfall. There's a footfall. You can't look over there. There's a footfall. So you notice that whenever I'm asking for a footfall of the horse, my hand is coming out over the hole that we talked about. This is the puppet. So if I have a slight lift on this, there comes the right front foot. Or the rider comes to a position of asking for a foot. The horse may or may not be in the right position to give you that particular movement. So we want to pick him up. There's the step of the front foot. Pick up the other side. And there's a step. There's a step. There's a step. Now I'm going to go into a hindquarter pivot by lifting this rein right there. Hindquarter pivot is where that right side anchored just for a moment. I'm going to lift him up and just put a little bit of elevation. Elevation is just a contact that stays stationary. Pretty soon you're going to see the horse step into this position. Not yet. When he does it, he's going to actually step back with his right front foot into my stirrup. Not yet. There. That's stepping into the hole. The hole here, remember that when the space between the horse's shoulder and the rider's foot is the hole. So your hand stays in that area. It can't be moving around. It's got to be working in that space. So we want to place that foot. Here's where his feet have to get in the right spot. And there they go. That's when the rein drops. So now as you get along with your horse, when you get to the point of both your reins, if I want this horse, my thumbs are pointing up. That means if my thumbs are pointing up, both reins are touching the neck. If I rotate my palm to the ground, this rein left the neck. That became stepping in. That's the hind quarter pivot. That's where it steps into the hole. Both reins are touching the neck. If I just turn my palm down, that rein leaves the neck. So that becomes the open door, steps into the hole. And this is the beginning of the hind quarter pivot. And all this stuff, as you're doing it, this is where it's not the performance of the horse that you're trying to demand. It's the observation of the decision that you're trying to learn as you see your horse work through whatever it is that we're asking, because he has not a clue what's expected of him. You know, so we want to remember that. So we're in this position, both reins are touching the horse. Now we talked a little bit about the backup. So we make this contact, and now I start to drop my seat, and it has an effect on the horse. My hands don't change, but my feet do, or my seat does. I sit up, take the arch out of my back, or put the arch back in, and the horse stops. Drop the arch down, and the horse starts his movement again. Now, for all of you that are in your saddle, if you take your stirrups and push forward, tell me if you don't feel pressure on the back of your inside of your knees. You should, right? Okay, that pressure is what backs your horse up. Okay? So when you press on this, it's like pressing on a pair of brakes almost. But as you make that press, that squeeze in there is what causes your encouragement of movement. It seems to have an effect as well. Like sometimes I have a horse that won't back up straight. If you brace yourself on both stirrups like that, they will probably back up straight. So, just want you to kind of play with that for a little bit and see how you do with it. Now, do you remember what you're playing with? What was the first thing we talked about? Give to the bit. Usually if I go to a rider, if they're using a leg for a decision, the pressure is pretty significant. I mean, it's just because it's a natural thing to do. And showing, you know, the way it was explained to me was that when I apply a leg to the horse, if it were a fly underneath, he might lose his wings, but he wouldn't die. That's kind of the way I was told anyway. So that makes you kind of search for your horse rather than just planting a leg against there and trying to push the horse over. Okay, when you get your horses giving to the bit well and you feel that softness, that's when you can find your leg on the horse and create your pivot on the forehand. Very good, Susan. Very good. Now, are you asking for a backup, Tina, or the? Okay. Instead of drawing your hand down here into him, he should be at the point, I think he is, that you don't need any more than a contact of the rein up here in the middle of the neck. Because if you get down here, you'll find yourself kind of bracing with your hand, and it'll have a negative effect on him probably. So if you just come in here on the neck and just work it from that position so that you're not finding yourself pushing down into that. There you go. Good. So now we're going to lift. Okay, now here's where he's going to walk in a circle. So here's where the lift stays the same. We want him to find the decision there. Now here's where we want the pivot. Right there. Now I try up the other side. Well, going to his right is not an easy choice for him. There. Atta boy.
Okay, put him in a stance.
Now we're going to lift him.
You got the beginning step.
This is the puppet. There it is. Right, see, right here in this circle, this is where I'm going to lift right here and be stationary.
Right.
And this is where he'll make a decision. Now he's going to walk in the circle. Right there. Well, there's a point where you're going to naturally try to make him do the right thing. He doesn't know what the right thing is.
Right.
This is where you have to be
I'm
stationary
breaking it down.
enough that so when you pick this up, there's his first energy.
Right.
Pick it up again. There's a second energy. Now here comes the foot right there. Okay, so there's no real pressure being asked of him.
Right.
There's a contact. There's a decision. Okay, but it's all about waiting for him to find his way into that. Okay, now this is where I want you see where the ground is between your foot and her shoulder?
Oh, yeah.
Right in that hole, right dead center between your foot and her shoulder. Put your eyes there and don't take them away. And now slowly start to ask her to make that decision. And wait in that decision-making process until she actually steps in there. This is where you're going to lift slightly and barely let her feel your calf. Barely.
So you're looking for that shoulder to come up, correct?
Yeah, that left shoulder is going to come up right there. There's a step.
I think what
Now pick it up again.
us is the walk forward on it. I think that's the confusing part.
Well, it is, because if the horse is walking forward, it looks like maybe it's doing it.
But it's not.
But if you guys can watch this for a second, watch what happens here when this horse, and I'll call it when the horse does it. And right there was when, now what you felt right there was that she was almost about to back up, correct? You could feel that. That's the weight transfer.
Oh, okay.
That's where she's set into the hindquarter. So she's prepared then to move the front end. Well, that's all you want is just that one step. And what happens after that step becomes totally up to the rider. But in a lesson like this, it's important that we keep a focus on what we're actually asking for, and that's for the placement of that foot. And then what happens after that placement is secondary. And we mentioned earlier that when you're teaching a horse, it's the entry movement that you're teaching. The first step of every movement is what you're teaching. The preceding steps come along naturally after you have your entry movement works every time. So when I ask this guy to make that step into the hindquarter off the puppet rein, right there, that's what gives you the preparation or the understanding of what is about to happen.
Right.
So it all kind of fits together. So he's got to be able to actually give you the pivot. So he asks for the softness in the bridle. Not yet. There. Now the backup. There's one. So the bridle has to disappear as soon as the stationary left front happens. Right there. And if that bridle doesn't disappear, he'll just keep wandering all over the place because he doesn't know what he just did. Well, no, but the part of the proficiency of one rein is to be able to do it just with one rein.
Yeah, I'm sorry you did that.
Because that outside rein obviously will work.
Right.
But we want to see if because this coordination business of picking up the puppet kind of a thing is what kind of gets in the way. So we pick him up. And for this horse, the easiest maneuver, which should be the forehand pivot, is not that easy. There he goes.